Something happened on May 12, 2026, that I genuinely cannot stop thinking about. Google held what they called the Android Show, I/O edition, and I sat there watching the whole thing from start to finish, and by the time it ended, I had this weird mix of emotions that I am still trying to process. It was equal parts genuinely impressive and deeply unsettling, not in a vague tinfoil hat kind of way, in a very specific, very real, this is actually happening kind of way, because what Google announced that day is not just a new version of Android. What they announced is the end of Android as we have ever known it, they said. It themselves, the president of the Android ecosystem. Samir Samit stood on that stage and told the world that Android is no longer an operating system. It is now, in their exact words, an intelligence system that is not marketing language, that is a mission statement. And if you actually understand what that shift means for the 3 billion active Android devices running on this planet right now, you should probably be paying very close attention, because this is not a distant future concept. This is arriving in your pocket in a matter of weeks. Android 17 has been in beta since February 2026. Beta 3 already hit platform stability, meaning the API surface is locked. Developers are already building for it, and the stable release is expected to drop somewhere in June or July. The first devices to get it will be Pixel and Samsung Galaxy S26 series, and then it cascades down from there. So the conversation we are about to have is not hypothetical. This is a conversation about something that is almost already here. The centerpiece of the entire Android 17 story is something Google is calling Gemini. Intelligence. Not Gemini the app, not Google Assistant 2.0, not AI integration in the traditional sense of a button you tap when you want help. They are calling it an agentic system, and that word agentic is one you need to understand, because it changes everything about how your phone actually works. Agentic means it does not just answer your questions, it takes actions on your behalf. It books things, it fills forms, it orders groceries. It operates apps you are not even looking at in the background while you are doing something else entirely. Before I lose you with the tech terminology, let me just paint you a picture of what this actually looks like in practice, because the demo they showed was genuinely slick. Imagine you are running late and you spot a concert poster as you are leaving the subway. You take a picture of it, tell Gemini to get you 2 floor tickets, and it just does it. No opening Ticketmaster, no filling out your card details, no confirming your address 3 times. It handles the whole thing end to end while you are already walking. Then you ask it to find good late night food nearby. It books a table, and it drops a follow-up event in your calendar for next week because you had such a good time. That sounds incredible, honestly, and part of me absolutely wants that to exist. But the other part of me, the part that has watched Google demo this level of seamless AI integration approximately 4 or 5 times over the last several years and then watched it fall apart in real-world conditions, that part of me is very, very skeptical. Remember Google Assistant calling restaurants to book haircuts? That was 2018, 8 years later. I still occasionally have my alarm set for PM instead of AM and only figure it out when I am staring at the ceiling at 3 in the morning. So when Google shows me a flawless demo of an AI booking concert tickets without asking a single follow-up question like what time you want to arrive, whether you want standing or seated, or which credit card to charge, I have real questions. Because demos live in controlled environments, and life very much does not. And that tension between what is being promised and what is likely to actually happen in the messy, chaotic real world is exactly what I want to dig into today. Because Android 17 is genuinely exciting. Some of this stuff is legitimately the best AI in an OS work I have ever seen from any company, but some of it is also unsettling in ways that most of the coverage is completely glossing over, and I think that conversation is worth having properly. So let us start with the features that deserve genuine credit, because there is real good here before we get into the uncomfortable territory. The one that caught my attention more than anything else, more than the agentic booking demos, more than the concert ticket moment, is the custom widgets feature. I know that sounds like a strange thing to lead with, but hear me out. Custom widgets is the kind of feature that solves a real daily frustration without requiring you to hand over your entire digital life to an AI agent. You open your phone, tell Gemini in plain English exactly what you want your home screen widget to look like, and it builds it on the spot. You want only wind speed and rain probability from your weather app? Nothing else. Done. You want a widget that tracks 3 different time zones plus your next to calendar events in one single glance. Describe it and it appears. I personally have spent embarrassing amounts of time downloading, testing, and deleting weather widgets trying to find one that shows exactly the data I care about without 12 other things I do not. This feature would have saved me hours. And it earns its place because the utility is genuine and the data exposure is minimal. That is the kind of AI integration that actually makes sense. Then there is Rambler, which is coming to both Android phones and Android Auto, and I think this one is also genuinely clever. The premise is simple. You are in the car. Someone cuts you off. Your kids are arguing in the back seat. You are trying to dictate a voice message to your boss with standard voice to text. Whatever comes out of your mouth, including the things you should not say, ends up in the message. Rambler listens to your entire dictation, pulls out only the relevant content, cleans up the language, and turns it into a proper coherent message. If you have ever accidentally sent someone a voice-to-text reply that included background noise, mid-sentence, corrections, or a comment directed at traffic that was definitely not meant for your recipient, you understand immediately why this matters. The multilingual support is also confirmed, which for a lot of users globally is actually the bigger deal. The Android Auto overhaul is also worth a mention. Better fit across different screen sizes and cars, video playback with Dolby Atmos support while parked, which is an absolute lifesaver if you own an EV and you have ever spent 40 minutes sitting at a public charging station with nothing to do, and deeper integration across BMW, Hyundai, Kia, Mercedes-Benz, Volvo, and others rolling through the rest of 2026. The security upgrades are probably the most structurally important improvements in this release, even though they are not the ones grabbing headlines. There is verified banking call protection where Android will automatically end calls from numbers pretending to be your bank, provided your bank's app is installed and opted in. Revolut and Nubank are the first confirmed partners, with more to follow. Then there is dynamic signal monitoring, which is live on-device AI that watches apps in real time for suspicious behavior. Things like quietly forwarding your SMS messages, abusing accessibility permissions, or hiding their icon and running silently in the background. That last one is a specific attack pattern that has been used in banking malware for years. Having it flagged at the OS level rather than relying on individual security apps is a meaningful step forward. Theft detection lock and remote lock are also now enabled by default on all new Android 17 devices globally, following a successful pilot in Brazil, and the Find Hub Lost Phone feature now requires biometric authentication in addition to your PIN. So even if someone knows your passcode, they cannot use it alone to locate your device. These are not flashy headline features. They are the kind of structural improvements that actually matter to real people in real situations. So the question you are probably asking right now is, where exactly does the concerning part come in? Because so far this sounds pretty good. Smart widgets, cleaner voice messages, better car integration, stronger security, and you would be right that on the surface level, the individual features are solid. The concerning part is not any single feature. The concerning part is what the entire package represents when you zoom out and look at it together. Google is not just adding AI features to Android. They are replacing the operating system paradigm entirely. When your phone's core system layer is described as an intelligent system rather than an operating system, that means the AI is not a feature you launch when you need it. It is the foundation that everything else runs on top of. Gemini Intelligence is not an app you open. It is the layer between you and every other app on your device. It has visibility into your screen, your apps, your calendar, your messages, your forms, your browsing, your purchases, and your physical location context at all times, because that is exactly what it needs in order to do the things Google is promising it will do. And that shift from tool to infrastructure is a fundamentally different relationship between you, your device, and the company that built both the platform and the AI sitting at its core. Privacy advocates have already raised concerns about the expanded data processing requirements. While Google emphasizes on device processing for sensitive operations, the company has not published detailed documentation about which data types remain local versus which ones travel to the cloud, and that gap in transparency matters enormously. Because the features that sound the most impressive are precisely the ones that require the deepest access. When Gemini fills out a complex from using information pulled from your connected apps, it is reading across your Gmail, your calendar, your saved documents, and potentially your photo library simultaneously. To do that, when it books something on your behalf, it is accessing payment credentials and submitting them to third-party services. The scope of what has to be accessible for these features to function is genuinely unprecedented at the OS level. Let me be specific about the trust problem, because I think it is the most important thing to understand about Android 17 and nobody is really talking about it directly. Google's official documentation on the privacy architecture says all the right things. You have granular controls to explicitly enable or disable AI features. Connecting Gemini to autofill is strictly opt-in. Gemini can only access the apps you allow it to work in, not the rest of your device. It requires user confirmation before making purchases on your behalf. That all sounds reasonable on paper. But here is where I want you to think carefully, because this is where the real conversation starts. Every single one of those protections depends entirely on you understanding what you are opting into when you tap accept on a permission screen. And if you have ever actually read a permission screen carefully before tapping through it, you are already in a very small minority of smartphone users on this planet. The average person sees a prompt that says something like allow Gemini to access your apps to help complete tasks, and they tap yes, because they want the feature to work. They are not thinking about what that access actually means at a technical level. They are not thinking about which apps qualify, or what happens to the data those apps contain, or how long Gemini retains context from a task it completed 3 weeks ago. They just want the thing to work, and Google knows this. Every major technology company knows this. The entire consent architecture of modern software is built around the documented psychological reality that people click through permission prompts without reading them. That is not a conspiracy theory. That is a business model. So when Google says these powerful agentic features are opt-in and user-controlled, that is technically true. And it is also somewhat misleading, because the practical reality of how humans interact with permission systems means that most people will end up with substantially more access granted than they consciously intended to grant. And once that access is granted at the OS level to a system described as the foundational intelligence layer of the entire device, the surface area of what is potentially exposed is enormous. Now let us talk about the autofill and form completion feature specifically, because this is the one that made me stop and sit with the implications for a few minutes. The pitch is elegant. You are filling out a travel booking form, and instead of manually entering your passport number, expiration date, nationality, address, and emergency contact for the 14th time this year, Gemini scans your connected apps and photo library, finds the relevant information, and fills it in for you automatically. I genuinely wished this existed the last time I booked an international flight. But here is the practical question the demo does not answer. What happens when you have multiple passports in your photo library because you renewed and kept both? What happens when your photo library also contains your spouse's passport, your kids' passports, and a scan of an expired document from 4 years ago that you forgot was even in there? Which one does it use? How does it decide? And more importantly, what happens when it gets it wrong on a form submitted to an airline or a government portal because you trusted the AI to handle it and did not double-check? Google reiterates that your data is kept private, that you have controls over what Gemini can access, and that the user always has final confirmation before a task completes. But that final confirmation step only protects you if you are actually reading it before you tap confirm, which brings us right back to the same problem we were just discussing. There is also a deeper structural issue that goes beyond individual feature failures, and it has to do with what happens when an agentic AI makes a mistake inside a third-party app. Prompt injection is worth understanding if you are not already familiar with it. It is an attack where malicious content embedded in a web page or a document tricks an AI agent into taking actions the user never intended. A bad actor could theoretically embed invisible instructions in a web page that Gemini's auto-browse feature reads while completing a task for you, and those instructions could redirect the agent to do something you never asked for. This is not a theoretical vulnerability invented in a research lab. It is a documented attack vector that has already been demonstrated against multiple AI agent systems in 2025 and early 2026, and now Google is building those same agent capabilities directly into the foundational layer of an operating system running on 3 billion devices. The scale of that potential attack surface is something the industry has genuinely never had to deal with before. And then there is the data dimension, which I think deserves to be stated clearly without drama. For Google, the Android 17 launch serves dual purposes. It demonstrates Gemini's practical applications while simultaneously creating additional data collection touchpoints. Every AI interaction generates training data that flows back to improve Google's models, strengthening the company's position against OpenAI and Anthropic in the broader AI race. I am not saying that is necessarily sinister. Training on interaction data to improve AI systems is standard practice across the entire industry, but you deserve to know that when you use Gemini intelligence to book a concert, fill out a form, or automate a grocery order, that interaction is not just a service Google is providing you, it is also data that Google is collecting from you, and that data makes their AI systems better, which makes the product more compelling, which makes more people use it, which generates more data. That loop is the actual business model underneath all of the genuinely impressive consumer features. Understanding that loop does not mean you should refuse to use the features. It means you should use them with your eyes open. So where does all of this leave you practically? Because I do not want to spend this much time walking through everything that could go wrong and then leave you standing there with no actual direction that is not useful to anyone. The honest answer is that Android 17 is not a binary choice between fully embracing everything Google announced and throwing your phone into a river. It is a set of individual decisions that you can and should make deliberately, feature by feature, rather than just tapping through the setup wizard and accepting whatever defaults Google has chosen for you. The defaults matter enormously here, because while things like theft detection lock and remote lock will now be enabled by default in ways that genuinely work in your favor, the features that benefit Google's data ecosystem will also be nudged toward on by default. That is simply how this works. So when Android 17 arrives on your device, do not rush through the setup. Sit with each permission prompt. Read what it is actually asking. Understand which features require cloud processing versus on-device processing, because that distinction matters enormously for your actual privacy exposure. Google has confirmed that many Gemini intelligence features use on-device models for sensitive operations, and knowing which category a feature falls into tells you a lot about what you are really agreeing to. Think carefully about which agentic features you actually need versus which ones just looked cool in a demo. The custom widgets feature genuinely earns its place. The data exposure is minimal and the utility is real. Rambler for voice messages is also reasonable. The context it processes is limited and the problem it solves is one. People actually have, but full app automation where Gemini is navigating third-party apps on your behalf, completing purchases, filling forms with passport data, accessing your Gmail to pull context for tasks that is a different category of access entirely. Start with low-risk tasks, keep sensitive workflows manual for now, and treat every agentic action as something that deserves your actual attention rather than your autopilot. The other thing worth paying attention to is the privacy dashboard enhancement that Google confirmed is coming. Android's privacy dashboard will soon show which AI assistants were active and which apps they accessed in the last 24 hours. When that feature rolls out, actually use it. Check it regularly, especially in the first few weeks after you enable any Gemini intelligence features. That audit trail is one of the more honest things Google has built into the system, because it gives you real visibility into what the AI was doing on your behalf rather than just asking you to trust a privacy policy document. If you look at that log and see activity you do not recognize or did not intend, that is your signal to pull back access on whatever feature generated it. The system is designed to be auditable, so audit it, because that is the only way trust actually gets built between users and AI systems over time, not through keynote promises, but through demonstrated, verifiable behavior that you can actually check. One more thing worth mentioning before we wrap this up, because the Android 17 story does not stop at your phone. Google also announced Google Book, their new laptop category built on Android and incorporating Chrome, the full Google Play App Store, and Gemini Intelligence into a single laptop experience. The first Google Books are being built by Acer, Asus, Dell, HP, and Lenovo, arriving this fall between September and November 2026. Every single one of them will ship with Gemini Intelligence as the foundational layer, same as Android 17 on phones, which means the same questions we have been discussing about data access, agentic behavior, and trust at the OS level now extend to your laptop as well. Gemini Intelligence will become available across Android devices including watches, cars through Android Auto, glasses through Android XR, and laptops through Google Book later this year. When you connect those dots, what you are looking at is a single AI layer with a unified view of your entire digital life across every screen you interact with throughout your day. That is either the most helpful thing technology has ever built for you, or it is the most comprehensive personal data architecture any private company has ever assembled. Probably it is both simultaneously, and that tension is something worth sitting with for more than a minute. Here is where I personally land after spending several days going through everything Google announced on May 12th and reading across every serious technical analysis I could find. Android 17 is the most genuinely capable and thoughtfully constructed version of Android that Google has ever shipped. Some of these features are not just good, they are category defining. The security improvements alone are worth the update for most people. But the rebranding from operating system to intelligent system is not just a marketing headline. It reflects a real and permanent architectural shift in what your phone is, what it does with your data, and what kind of relationship you now have with the company that built it. That shift is worth understanding clearly before you hand over the keys. So when Android 17 lands on your device this summer, and it will land update with intention, read before you tap. Check your privacy dashboard, start with the low-risk features, and earn your way toward the powerful ones through actual observed behavior rather than demo trust. And if something feels off, trust that instinct, because you are the one living inside this intelligent system, not Google.